Have you ever felt stuck? Not because you're not good enough, but because you can't stop beating yourself up every time you mess up. You replay the same moment, over and over again. That one mistake, that wrong word, that single choice that changed everything. And every time it hits your mind, that same voice whispers, I should have known better. I should have done better. I should have been different. I know that voice. I lived with it for years. It's the quiet, constant storm inside your head. The one that convinces you punishment is progress, that guilt equals growth, that suffering somehow means you care enough to change. But here's the truth I wish someone had told me earlier. Self-punishment isn't discipline. It's self-sabotage disguised as strength. I used to think the harder I was on myself, the stronger I'd become, but all I really did was build walls around my potential. You can't rise when you're too busy breaking yourself down. Real discipline isn't about pain, it's about progress. It's not about sitting in regret. It's about standing back up while your heart's still bruised. Remember a friend of mine, let's call him John. John once lost a $50 million deal. Not because he wasn't skilled, not because he wasn't smart, but because in one heated meeting, he let pride speak louder than purpose. One sentence, one flash of ego, and the deal vanished. That night, he paced his apartment like a caged animal. No food, no sleep, just anger and self-hate. He thought destroying himself was the way to rebuild. But 3 days later, he realized he'd made the worst mistake of all while he was busy punishing himself. The chance to repair what he'd lost had already disappeared. A friend finally told him, instead of spending 72 hours feeling sorry for yourself, spend 72 minutes fixing it. That line hit him like a punch, but it woke him up. He learned that self-punishment isn't responsibility, it's avoidance, because guilt feels productive. It tricks your brain into thinking you're doing something when really, you're just standing still. You're not learning, you're not improving, you're just reliving pain. So here's the shift. Stop calling guilt discipline. Stop calling shame accountability. They're not the same. Discipline is saying, I'll do better next time. Shame is saying, I'll never be enough. And those two sentences lead to two completely different lives. Accountability builds you. Shame buries you. There's a difference between saying, this went wrong, let me fix it, and saying, I went wrong, I am broken. Gives you power, the other steals it. You can't teach yourself anything while you're hating yourself. You can't move forward when your mind is stuck on rewind, used to replay moments over and over, conversations that ended too soon, relationships that slipped away, opportunities I let fear destroy, thought replaying them was reflection. It wasn't. It was mental torture. Real reflection has direction. It ends with action. That's what separates the average from the 1%. The ones who rise faster than fear aren't born tougher, they just recover quicker. 2 people can fall the same way. Takes 6 months to get back up, the other takes 6 minutes. Same pain, same problem, different recovery speed. That's the 1% mindset. Not avoiding failure, but refusing to stay down for long. It's the speed of your comeback that defines your strength. When life knocks you down, don't waste time asking why me. Ask what now? Because every second you spend living in regret is a second you steal from your next opportunity. I call this the mental reset. It's the muscle that separates the powerful from the broken. You build it every time you choose action over emotion. And I've learned that emotion is a liar. It tells you to wait, to wallow. It convinces you that recovery needs time, but most of the time, it just needs clarity. Clarity that says, yes, I failed, yes, it hurt, but no, it's not the end. That's when you start to rise, when everything collapses. Your plans, your confidence, your control. You need a system, something that keeps your thoughts from turning into chaos. Here's mine. It's simple, but it saves me every time. Acknowledge, analyze, adjust, advance. 4 steps, 4 moves that bring order back to the storm. First, acknowledge. Face the truth, say it out loud. Not I'm a failure, not I always mess up, just this went wrong. That's it. No drama, no excuses, no denial, just honesty, because you can't fix what you won't face. Second, analyze, ask yourself why. Not why me, but why did this happen? Find one cause, not 1,000 feelings. When you can name the real cause, you take your power back. Third, adjust. Make the smallest effective change. You don't need to burn your whole life down just because one thing cracked. Find the one brick that's weak and reinforce it. And last, advance, move forward, don't sit there staring at the past like it's gonna apologize. The past doesn't owe you closure, and it owes you lessons. Every setback is a classroom. Every mistake is a blueprint for your next breakthrough. The real ones don't get stuck replaying what broke. They get busy rebuilding stronger, but to rebuild, you need limits. Not on your dreams, but on your morning time. That's something I learned from one of my mentors, a man who once lost millions overnight. I asked him how he didn't crumble. He said, "I give myself 24 hours to feel bad, then I get back to work." That line changed me, because pain is natural, but drowning in it is a choice. The longer you suffer, the smaller your world becomes, and the truth is, the world doesn't pause for your heartbreak. You either move with it or get left behind. So now when I fail, I set a timer in my mind. 24 hours, that's it. I let myself feel it. The disappointment, the anger, the shame, but when the time's up, I get up, I write down what I learned, and I take one action that moves me forward. That's the rule. No more letting guilt rent space in my head. No more giving emotions the keys to my future. And you know what happens? Each time you do this, the recovery window gets smaller. You start bouncing back in hours instead of days, minutes instead of hours. That's growth, that's strength. It's not that life gets easier, it's that you get faster at standing up. But to stand up, you need one more thing, emotional discipline, because emotions will lie to you every single time. They'll tell you everything's falling apart when you're really just tired. They'll tell you you've lost it all when you've only lost perspective. You can't trust emotions when your mind is on fire. You have to wait for the smoke to clear. Never make big decisions when you're emotional. Never let temporary feelings cause permanent damage. I've watched people ruin years of progressing. One angry hour, and relationships, destroy businesses, burn bridges, because they let their emotions lead the way. But the strongest people learn to delay action until their mind cools down. That's not weakness. That's mastery. You're not avoiding life. You're just refusing to let chaos drive. And that's what the 1% do differently. They don't let their emotions decide their direction. They let their values do it. The storm may shake them, but it never breaks them. You know what separates the great from the good? It isn't luck. It's how fast they reset. The greats don't wait for motivation. They build momentum. They don't cry about the wall in front of them. They climb it before doubt even wakes up. Because here's the truth. Motivation is a spark. Discipline is the engine. And clarity is the driver that never hits the brakes. The 1% understand this. You don't rise when you feel ready. You rise when you refuse to stay down. And that's what Stoicism has always taught. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Read that again. Because most people still live backwards. They keep trying to control everything but their own thoughts. They chase peace in money, validation, attention. But they forget the only peace that lasts comes from self-command. When you master your mind, you stop reacting to life and start responding to it. That's power, quiet power. When someone disrespects you and you don't need to explode. Silence speaks louder. When life hits you, you don't need to fall apart. You bend, but you don't break. That's Stoicism in motion, not coldness, not numbness, but control. Control of your energy. Control of your reactions. Control of your story. Because if you don't write your story, someone else will, and they'll make you the victim in it. You ever notice how people who complain the most usually take the least action? That's because complaining gives you the illusion of control without actually changing anything. But the Stoic refuses to waste breath on blame. They take that same breath and turn it into purpose. They say, "Okay, this happened. So what am I going to do about it?" That single question right there. That's the start of every comeback. And listen, your comeback doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't need fireworks. Sometimes it's just you getting out of bed on a bad day, showing up even when no one's clapping, choosing growth instead of gossip. That's a quiet revolution. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your evolution is not a group project. It's you alone sharpening your soul in the silence. Because silence, real silence, isn't emptiness. It's alignment. It's where the noise stops and you finally hear your own thoughts again. That's when you realize you don't need to chase peace. You create it. So ask yourself right now, what's one thing you've been holding on to too long? A regret, a failure, something that no longer belongs in your hands? Let it go. Forgive yourself for the version of you that didn't know better. That version walked so you could run. You can't evolve while dragging your past like a weight. You gotta cut the rope, because your next level of peace won't meet you until you stop worshiping your pain. I've learned this the hard way. Every time I held on to guilt, life kept handing me lessons wrapped in more guilt. It wasn't punishment. It was repetition. Life keeps sending the same test until you learn it. So learn it now. Pass the class. Graduate from your own chaos. That's the 1% mindset. Not perfection, but progression. Not speed, but steadiness. You get knocked down 7 times, you rise 8. You fall apart, you rebuild better. Every scar becomes a sentence in your story of survival. And when people look at you and ask, how do you stay so calm, so unbothered? You'll just smile and say, because I don't fight storms anymore. I dance in the rain. That's what Stoic Spark is all about, finding strength in stillness, finding clarity in chaos, finding yourself again. So take this moment right here, breathe in and remind yourself you're not behind, you're becoming. The world doesn't need a louder you. It needs a wiser you, a grounded you, a you who can look pain in the eye and still move with purpose. Because in the end, peace isn't found in what you conquer. It's found in what you choose not to fight anymore. In a world that screams for attention, be the one who whispers with intention. Your calm, that's your flex. Your silence, that's your edge. Your peace, that's your greatest rebellion. If this message hit home, subscribe to Stoic Spark and tap that bell icon, because your journey to inner power is just getting started. And as always, stay grounded, stay disciplined, and keep your spark burning quiet but unbreakable.